One of the most fascinating aspects of the pyramids of Egypt is not simply the pyramids themselves, but how they were actually built, which is really up for grabs in many ways. One big question for the pyramids of Egypt is how almost all of them have an angle of about 52 degrees, and how the Egyptians were able to get this so accurate on almost all of their pyramids. One immediate hypothesis that many mathematicians had is that the Egyptians had a very good sense of trigonometry, and hence they really knew pi, which says a lot for mathematics, because it says that at that time they knew this very fundamental value in math. And at the same time, many suggest that in fact they weren't very good at math, and perhaps in making these pyramids they didn't in fact need pi. And I'm going to show you what the evidence is for that. So the reason people think they need pi is because in order to have any kind of pyramid, if you create a right triangle here, then you'd have to know the height of that pyramid and the base of the pyramid to be able to construct it, which means that you derived it from some sort of angle, which has to deal with the tan of that angle is h over b. So that's why, and because angles are in radians, and that has to deal with pi, then people think they need pi. But what actually might have happened is, if the Egyptians just had something like a stone wheel, which they knew the diameter of, and since we know that the circumference of this circle is the diameter times pi, and here we're assuming they don't know this value, but they know that there's such thing as a circumference, and if they were to roll it and all the way around once, then this distance is pi times d. But they just knew that this was some kind of distance, so they marked this barrel, they rolled it around once, and then they had some kind of distance. So let's say they did that n times to have a very large distance. So we call it pi over d, which is the circumference of one rotation, times n, and n equals the number of rotations. And then, upon doing that, then from this point, then they started going up, and they went up the value of nd, which is however many, the diameter of the circle times however many times they rotated this drum. So what does this make? This makes a triangle, back to the original starting position. And if we want to know this angle, what do? So right here I've drawn that it's about 4 times, and let's say this was just one rotation, so this was n pi d. Then what you have here is tan of the angle equals 4nd, which is the opposite side of the angle over the adjacent side, which is n pi d. You cancel out and you get 4 over pi. And what this value actually is about 52 degrees. So what did the Egyptians do? They might have just rolled this drum and then started building. So they built a base out of this distance. Let's project this in 3D. And then they went straight up as they built and kept in mind this measurement. So this might have been their way of making a very, very accurate pyramid in terms of the angle. So what is the evidence that they actually use this? Well, almost all the pyramids use this angle of 52 degrees, based on rolling it once n times over and then bringing it up n times. But there are some pyramids, in fact only 2, that show a different angle. And that angle is actually 43.5 degrees. And in fact, using this way of making a pyramid, it's actually just if you went up 3 times instead of 4. So imagine a shorter pyramid. And we see this at the Red Pyramid, and in one actually interesting pyramid where it starts at 52 degrees, and then halfway up, when they decided that they needed something a little stronger, then they switched to 43.5. So this provides evidence that maybe in fact they didn't have any equations like I just showed you, and they simply just wrote this drum and brought it up, and that's how they made the pyramids.